Well, I want to welcome to the program. I was just talking about this whole dicamba issue, but we have three farmers who are with us today, and these three farmers are Richard Coy, Jimmy Williams, and Sean Peebles, and they are in studio with us today. And it's a very tight camera, so I have to excuse us. So, guys, how you doing today? How you doing this morning?
Doing good, Paul.
Doing good.
Okay. All right. So let's start with this whole issue. So we got the dicamba situation. The EPA says dicamba is good to go. Our plant board here in Arkansas banned it for a time, and now we've got the story on the front page of the Gazette saying, "Hey, you guys ignored your own scientists." Or we've got the emails or the Gazette, got the email. So what's y'all's reaction? Let's start with Richard, Richard Coy, and you are a honey bee farmer.
Yes, I'm a beekeeper. Well, my reaction is that I can't believe that they ignored all of the science from EPA scientists and scientists from across the country that said the volatility of dicamba is a problem.
Okay. Okay, let's go to Jimmy Williams. And you are a berry farmer.
Yes, sir. Strawberries and blackberries and other produce.
Okay. And so what's your reaction to this?
I'm not surprised, to be honest.
Okay.
It doesn't surprise me. It's been the problem from the start.
Okay. Sean Peebles, you are an organic farmer. What are your thoughts?
Same as Jimmy's. I mean, I'm not surprised the EPA did it. I think that Monsanto's been buying their way through politics and through the EPA since it started.
Okay. So you guys have done a petition, and it's already been submitted to try to do what? What are you trying to accomplish with this petition?
Well, what we're trying to accomplish is to stop a dicamba over-the-top application at temperatures that are high enough to cause volatility, which is the issue with dicamba.
Okay. So you also want the plant board to continue doing what they're doing, I'm assuming.
No, they need to do their jobs.
Okay, what would that be?
Just look out for the good and well-being of agriculture in Arkansas. That's not what's happening. Mm-hmm. They're looking out for one thing, which is dicamba-tolerant soybeans and cotton.
Okay, even though they already put a ban on.
It's fixing to change. That's why we had to submit this petition.
Okay, so tell me more about that. Why is it about to change? Like, how do you know that's about to change?
Sean, that's probably one for you.
Well, we've had a farmer file a petition with the plant board that was heard and was approved that allowed them to spray to June 15th with special application use permits to be able to spray all year.
Okay. And so
and those guys that want dicamba, there's only one group, and that is guys that are farming too many acres and can't manage what they got.
Yeah.
Dicamba is an easy button.
Okay.
Cleans up everything. Unfortunately, it kills everything around it.
Mm-hmm. And this is it's a clear case of, like, if you damage somebody's property, this is really a basic American concept. You're responsible if you damage it, but we kind of have the situation where, no, I mean, I'm using this product. I bought this product. I don't care where it goes after I use it. That doesn't seem right. I think most people say that doesn't seem right.
Well, the issue is physical drift with any herbicide is always going to be an issue, but most of the time it's pretty easy to track. You know where it comes from. Dicamba can go all over the place. We had some move across the end of a pumpkin field in 2017. No source to be found. Plant board and BASF both sent representatives out. BASF is a manufacturer of Ingenio, which is one of the dicamba formulations.
Yeah.
And there was no source to be found. Luckily, it was a small amount of damage on one part of the field.
So even though there has been a ban for a certain time period throughout the year, I mean, there was still a ton of dicamba damage across the state, right?
More in 2017 when it was legal. There was a study in Missouri this year that estimated Arkansas still had 100,000 acres of damaged soybeans in 2018 under the ban.
Okay, all right. So Richard Coy, you're kind of not on camera, sir, and I apologize.
That's all right.
We have a very, very, very small studio. If you want to move closer,
no,
you can.
I'm good.
Are you sure? Are you sure? All right. I want to bring you in here now. Tell us about your bee farming operation. Tell us about everything. You're not just in Arkansas, right? You're in other places.
That's right.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. Hope everybody had a fantastic Thanksgiving. I had a great one. Some time off was good. Being with the family. Everybody's pretty much sick of turkey in all of the different ways you can have it left over. Turkey soup, I don't know, just turkey sandwiches. I think everybody's ready to move on. I'll be the first to say it. If you haven't heard it, Merry Christmas. It is now time. It is now the time of holiday cheer, if you will. One of my favorite times of year. Of course, you could also, you see the headlines. You see them every year on Black Friday. Season's beatings. Yeah, because the consumer-driven mind of some Americans just goes bonkers on Black Friday, and people start beating each other like a mob. Yeah, I mean it was pretty sad. Matter of fact, did you see where irrelevant celebrity Bette Midler came out and said that people wouldn't get into a fight on Black Friday if they had a decent minimum wage? Isn't that this is how people think? Stupidity. This is an example of it. But yeah, that headlines that I just couldn't even believe it. And that's just, whatever. It's up at Breitbart. Bette Midler, Black Friday brawls wouldn't happen if people had a decent minimum wage.
I don't.
Stupidity, ladies and gentlemen, right there.
I don't get how these two ideas coalesce together. I understand that it's because people are trying to get the good deals because they don't have enough money.
They don't have enough money. That's her.
But here's the thing:
just paid them more.
People they're still going to look for those good deals on Black Friday.
Yeah, and they're still going to punch somebody in the face if they're out. If this is the last one, this is the last iPad.
Everyone in America could make $100,000 a year,
and then $100,000 wouldn't be worth anything. By the way,
that's true. But everyone could, in theory, make $100,000 a year. But they'd still do this.
Yeah, they still want.
They'd still wake up
deals.
at 3 a.m. to go Black Friday shopping the day after Thanksgiving.
It's a very elitist thing for her to say, by the way, but she'll get a pass. Let's see, what else do we have? Today is Cyber Monday. Now, yeah, some of the best deals that you'll find online, and with the internet sales tax and the Supreme Court doing what they did to free up. What the Supreme Court did? Just so you know, when the Supreme Court ruled that the state of Arkansas, for example, can hold a business in Indiana, for example, responsible for paying for our local amenities here. By the way, that's just going to be a tax on you, the Arkansan. It's just going to be a tax on us because they're going to pass those costs on to us because that's what businesses do. So it's actually going to be a tax increase on us. Just like raising the minimum wage is actually eventually going to cost everybody more money. All they've really done, and I'll talk about this more at the top of the next hour, all they've really done is put us on track for a national sales tax on the internet. This is where it's headed. It will be a national sales tax. That's what they want because, you see, you're going to have Arkansas attempt to pass an internet sales tax, okay? It's a part of Asa Hutchinson's budget. We'll talk more again about this at the top of the hour. Conduit News, courtesy of Conduit for Action, has a great story entitled Tax Switcheroo. And it's actually very depressing, but it's pretty – we'll just kind of see what lies ahead for conservative-minded people here in the state of Arkansas. Fiscally conservative, limited government folks. What lies ahead for us in the January session? We'll explore that at the top of the next hour. But the bottom line is this. If Arkansas passes an internet sales tax, and Mississippi and Texas, and it goes on and on and on and on, it's going to become so convoluted that there will be cries. Eventually, when everything breaks down, there's going to be cries of, well, we need Washington to just step up, and we need them to manage it. We need them to do a national sales tax and then basically distribute parts of it back to the states. That eventually, I believe, is what is going to happen here because, well, this is government we're talking about. This is not rocket science. They do the same thing. They have the same tendencies in order for them to grow. It's pretty easy. Well, that's a good question, Joe. Joe would ask, well, how would they split something like that properly? I don't know. They'll have to track you. They'll have to know, what purchases come from where. Certainly. I guess I can do that by IP address via zip code.
Yeah, and then we start getting into privacy concerns with that.
Oh, no. Privacy's not a big deal, Joe.
And
not a big deal.
And if
no one cares.
And if we start doing that, we start bringing if privacy concerns get raised, and then what do you do after that? Do you just go, hey, do you do it population based? Like you take the amount of Americans in the United States, divide the number of citizens in a state by the number of citizens in the country, and they get that percentage of the cut?
I don't know, but can you imagine just this? If the federal government were to step in and manage this, can you imagine the sheer cost of a new bureaucracy at the federal level to manage and monitor? Somebody in Arkansas just bought something on Amazon. Can you just imagine the sheer? Yeah. But can you imagine how much it would cost to run that? I mean, people don't understand the administrative costs associated to expanding government. I mean, it's ridiculous. But Joe, you mentioned privacy, sir. You mentioned privacy, right? And this is not up on our tabs. We don't have this story up. I want to talk about it later in the week. But China has now rolled out a social credit score for their citizens. It's not fully implemented, but it will be fully implemented by 2020. But it's already affecting, I think, 6 or 7 million people in China. And this is terrifying. This is a vision into how our technology can be used to enslave a population. And these 6 or 7 million people who are now under the social credit score are slaves, period. Make no mistake about it. Go read up on this. It's terrifying. So, essentially, you have a score, and your score fluctuates based on your behavior. So, if you go to a website the Chinese government doesn't want you to go to, your social credit score will go down. If you buy too much alcohol, your social credit score will go down. If you have someone, listen to this. This is what really sent chills down my spine. If you have someone over to your house who has a low social credit score, it affects your social credit score. Yes. So once your score gets low enough, Joe, over in the communist Chinese, the land of China, the communist land of China, once your social credit score gets low enough, you can't ride trains. You can't book plane. You can't go anywhere. You can't actually participate in society because you have not obeyed. And really, when we say, and we have said this as conservatives, as people in alternative media for years, we talk about all the way back to Reagan, probably before that, the social engineers. We've always talked about this, right? This concept of the United States government, the federal government, putting in policies, putting up choice architecture, if you will, in an effort to socially engineer the society they want. They would do this, and you see this with the EU. This is one of the reasons people got out or wanted to get out of Brexit, but that apparently is not going to happen because they're elites. But when we send our money to Washington, D.C., they would send it back to the states with strings attached in order to get us to behave the way they wanted us to. You would see it in small ways. The drinking age used to be 18. Then they withheld the highway funds until you raised it to 21, until each state raised it to 21. It's how they get uniformity across the code. And let's not mince words here. It is an oppressive, soft tyranny that the federal government has enacted and subjected the several states across this country to. And we call that, in different, situations, social engineering. What China is now doing, and the technology that they are now using and putting out there for their citizens, is slavery. I mean, it is social engineering to the point where you will withhold resources based on people, based on who you associate with, based on a credit score, but it's a social credit score. Guilt by association is legit over there now if you're under that system. That is terrifying. And I guarantee you the tech companies that are so-called American tech companies have helped with this. And we're gonna have to start learning that these American tech companies they're not American at all. They're just global companies. And it's all about the dollar. It's all about the dollar sign. And don't think there aren't people over here, your elitists, so-called intellectuals over here, that are looking at what China is doing to their society and thinking, wouldn't that be nice over here? Or maybe we could use it and it wouldn't be as bad. We could tweak it or something like that. Matter of fact, there's a really dark show on Netflix called Black Mirror. And it's basically like, individual episodes. It's like a Twilight Zone type situation where, it's just freaky stuff that happens. One of the Black Mirror episodes had to do with this very thing. And this woman, she ended up with this high social credit score, and it was all about her social credit, right? But she was trying to get to the wedding of her friend. She was so excited that she got invited because her friend who was getting married had a higher social credit score. She was going to get to and the more people that like your stuff, the higher your social credit score goes. I mean, it's like social media, Instagram, Facebook on steroids, right? And a few things happen on the way to the wedding, and people downvote her, and eventually she ends up with like a 4.1 or something, and she needs a 4.2 in order to book a flight. I mean, it's exactly what's going on in China, and it is absolutely terrifying to me. Absolutely terrifying. Okay, in other news, sorry to get off on that tangent, we have migrants, the caravan, storming the U.S. border. And according to the Daily Caller News Foundation, the United States responded with tear gas. U.S. Customs and Border Protection officials closed a port of entry in the wake of several hundred migrants who tried to storm the border between Tijuana and San Diego. Tear gas was fired at the oncoming migrants from the U.S. side. Fox News reports, and the migrant group, comprised of mostly men, dispersed in less than an hour. But you can see some of these Twitter images. You can see some of these videos of people running. Of course, you have the president who's saying, look, we'll shut the border down entirely. There's a lot that happened over the Thanksgiving break when it came to this, because there was a report out in the Washington Post that President Donald Trump had negotiated a deal with Mexico. Do what? Is that the physical border? Yeah. So that's a port of entry. So the Mexico government allegedly, according to the Washington Post, had negotiated a deal where they were going to keep the asylum seekers on the Mexican side of the border. And this went out, and it was reported, and then the Mexico government said, well, there hasn't been a formal deal reached. There was even somebody who was quoted in the Washington Post piece who walked her comments back, which is very strange. There is no agreement of any sort between the incoming Mexican government and the U.S. government. She said the future government's principal concern related to the migrants is their well-being in Mexico. The Washington Post reported Saturday that the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump had won support from President-elect's team for asylum seekers to wait in Mexico while their claims move through U.S. courts. The White House did not immediately respond to comments. So some confusion here over what was initially reported. Now the Mexican government denies. I don't know. Me thinks the deep state has a lot of power. What do you think? See, folks, there's a lot of people that want open borders. There's a lot of people that want these migrants to come in, and President says enough's enough. And he's saying, listen, we have to. We'll shut the border down if we have to, and we're gonna end the catch and release We're gonna end the idea of they say, hey, I want asylum. Okay, here's your court date. You never show up for your court date, and now you're in the country. We're not going to do that anymore. Or at least we're going to attempt to not do it until another judge, right? Until some judge says Trump can't do that anymore. So anyway, we're going to take a break. We're going to reset here and be back in just a moment. This is Conduit News Radio. We'll be back in a moment.
So my brother and I, we run Coy's Honey Farm, 12,000 hives. We run bees in Mississippi and Arkansas, from the Gulf Coast of Mississippi all the way up to Jonesboro. And our bees in Arkansas cover roughly 1 million acres that we pollinate, whether by pollination of watermelons and cucumbers, or it's pollinating soybeans and cotton. Soybeans and cotton do not require pollination, but it enhances the crop. And then we are also pollinating all of the wildlands, the wild vegetation, just because our bees are there. And so we cover a lot of area, and what I have seen in the last 2 years is a lot of the wild vegetation is being damaged or it dies. And in the areas where dicamba is used, our honey production has been cut down 50%.
Wow. So you're actually seeing less of a crop because of the use of this chemical.
That is correct. The last 2 years.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Also, over at conduitnews.com, I want you to be sure and click on the Conduit News store while you're there. Just click on the store button and shop for Christmas gifts, mugs, things like that, T-shirts. Joe keeps using the term the mug. My face is on one of them. But you can get the Marble Palace mug, which is what I'm a big fan of. Mother government mug thing. The bless your heart. In Arkansas, it's okay to criticize somebody as long as you say bless your heart before or after you say something negative about somebody. So we have that. Listen, I mentioned this earlier about Brexit, but this is really a serious situation. I mean, we've got people already calling for another referendum to exit the European Union if you are a citizen of the UK, because people just don't want to do it. I mean, their own leaders just want to resist the will of the people, which sounds familiar in a lot of respects over here. Well, just in terms of, you have large sections of the United States government who are lifers, who are unelected bureaucrats, who refuse to accept the fact that President Donald Trump is the president. And we see what they're doing. But what's going on with the Brexit is absolutely a tragedy. Absolutely a tragedy where Theresa May, an establishment person more loyal to the European Union than she is to her own country, is essentially now begging for political support for her Brexit deal, that the European Union has accepted it and said, okay, good, we got it. If the European Union is happy with this, then you know that this is a terrible, terrible situation for the people that initially voted. And you've got to understand something. The European Union wants to make this as painful as possible on the people of UK to teach them a lesson. There's very much a noble serf relationship that we're going to watch play out if they don't stop this deal, where the people of Great Britain will suffer, and they will be taught a lesson to never rise up and attempt to overthrow your overlords ever again. You will be taught a lesson, and that's what you're going to see here. It is a tragedy. Now, in the meantime, you have the French President Macron here, who has got to address the nation, his own country, because you have protesters who are, turning violent because they don't like their taxes being so high. Now, a couple of the publications I read over the Thanksgiving break reminded us of the history of what happens in France when you don't have a majority consensus about what the tax rates should or shouldn't be in France. And it looks like, this is from the AFP. Faced with violent anti-government protests in Paris, French President Emmanuel Macron on Tuesday will announce new measures in an attempt to rally support for environmental-friendly tax increases. That's what they call them, huh? Paris was counting the cost of clashes between police and demonstrators Sunday on the Champs-Élysées, where barricades were set on fire, luxury shop windows were smashed, and traffic lights uprooted. Can you imagine if, Occupy Wall Street, when they trashed everything, if it had been because of higher taxes? Some 30 people were injured. I'm not saying I wish for that here in this country at all. Don't misunderstand me. I'm just saying this is what French people do when you tax them too much. And there is a line. I've always asked, what is the line? Well, 6%, 6.5% state sales taxes, that's plenty. Well, we may need to raise it. Well, let's put the local taxes on top of it. Okay, it ends up being about 10%. Well, is 10% too high? No, 10%. Well, okay, what about 11%? What about 15%? What about 20%? What would it take for even leftists to be like, oh, that is too high. That's too high of a sales tax. I can't afford what I want to buy. Yeah, I know, but the point is there is a line. There is a line. They might not admit it, but there is. Well, unless they are full-blown socialists, and in that case, they want it to be 100%, and then they want the government to just give them free stuff. Well, it's not really free, though, is it? Anyway, we'll keep you updated on what's happening. It's all about the gas tax. Arkansas wants to raise the gas tax.
we have lost $1.1 million.
Wow, $1.1 million. Okay, so what's going to happen to your business? You know, as a bee farmer, what's going to happen to your business going forward if dicamba is not restricted in some way?
So we more than likely will leave Arkansas for honey production and move our bees to South Mississippi to collect a honey crop. We may have to bring bees to Arkansas just to have a place to put them down through the summer months, but they will not be collecting any honey, and they will be in poor condition. It's just a matter of space, of areas that we can take our bees.
Yeah.
But the bees in the last 2 years, our beehives are in poor health, which we don't have enough bees to send to our pollination contracts either.
Richard, maybe Monsanto will sell you some sort of dicamba-resistant honeybee.
I hope not.
Is that no? No, you wouldn't buy that?
No.
Maybe they've got the cure and they can just fix it right
well,
away.
I think they think they have the cure for everything.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, let's go back to Jimmy Williams, berry farmer. Tell us about your operation.
We grow about 2 acres of blackberries, and we've got 20,000 strawberries in right now. We started in 2012, and we've been growing ever since. So even though I've not been damaged by dicamba myself yet, it's been a lot of hard work, and we don't want to see that ruined. You know, we have talked tentatively about if we lose this fight, you know, we may leave the Delta and go somewhere to the hills where we can get away from it.
Yeah, because they're not spraying up in that neck of the woods.
No, not to the extent. No,
okay.
No.
So we have another example of a business potentially being uprooted, changing in a major way, if this continues. All right, Sean Peoples, let's talk about organic farming.
Mm-hmm.
Is there benefit to farming organic stuff in Arkansas? Tell us all the stuff that you farm.
I'm a contract grower, so we farm 2,000 acres of organic. We have a processing plant outside of Augusta, and we grow for Del Monte, Seneca, Gerber, any of the large corporations that want to contract a high volume of organic acres. We do green beans, process our pumpkins, edamame, sweet potatoes, numerous other crops.
Okay.
You know, the benefits to us is the fact that we can make a living on 2,000 acres and we control our weed pressure effectively without dicamba.
Wow.
Anybody can if they're well managed. Dicamba is not necessarily the answer. There are thousands of other chemicals out there that these other producers can use. They've chose dicamba because it helps the bottom line. It's inexpensive.
All right, so you know, we've talked to your friends here. You know, their businesses are going to radically change if this continues. What about you? Are you guys got plans, or you know, if you guys lose this fight?
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
To advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
And I have wanted to welcome back to Arkansas Chairman Chu. Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
China is also applying this power in more proactive ways than ever before to exert influence and interfere in the domestic policy and politics of this country.
Chairman Chu, I got to know as he is the CEO and chairman of Shandong Ruyi Technology Group out of Shandong Province.
Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown 9-fold. It's become the second largest economy in the world. Much of this success was driven by American investment in China. And the Chinese Communist Party has also used an arsenal of policies inconsistent with free and fair trade, including tariffs, quotas, currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and industrial subsidies that are handed out like candy to foreign investment.
We've been to Shandong Province a number of times since I've been governor. We've called on people, and Chairman Chu gave us the opportunity to meet with him at Ruyi, at their technology group there in Shandong. and saw his incredible facility. We asked him to visit Arkansas. He did. So, Chairman Chu, we're delighted to have you here. I'm excited about signing this agreement with you, and I welcome you to Arkansas.
These policies have built Beijing's manufacturing base at the expense of its competitors, especially the United States of America.
And I wanted to recognize Chairman Lee to my right, who is the founder of Sun Paper of Shandong Province in China. I also want to recognize Secretary Ma of Shandong Province.
As President Trump said just this week, in his words, we rebuilt China over the last 25 years.
Last November, as you know, I traveled to Shandong Province. I met with Chairman Lee. I toured Sun Paper Company along with Mike Preston. While in China, we signed a letter of intent on behalf of the state of Arkansas with Sun Paper, indicating that Sun Paper wanted to put a major bioproducts mill in South Arkansas, in Arkansas.
The Communist Party has set its sights on controlling 90% of the world's most advanced industries, including robotics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. To win the commanding heights of the 21st century economy, Beijing has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Lee and I met yesterday. Chairman Lee indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets as the cost of doing business in China. It also coordinates and sponsors the acquisition of American firms to gain ownership of their creations. Worst of all, Chinese security agencies have masterminded the wholesale theft of American technology, including cutting-edge military blueprints. And using that stolen technology, the Chinese Communist Party is turning plowshares into swords on a massive scale.
Well, thank you all for joining us via Skype from Beijing this morning. Here in Beijing, it is 10 p.m. in the evening. I've had a very successful trip to China.
China now spends as much on its military as the rest of Asia combined. And Beijing has prioritized capabilities to erode America's military advantages on land, at sea, in the air, and in space.
I've spoken at Tsinghua University here in Beijing, which was a treat for me to speak with young Chinese students about Arkansas, and also to talk about the relationship between China and the United States.
China wants nothing less than to push the United States of America from the Western Pacific and attempt to prevent us from coming to the aid of our allies. But they will fail. Beijing is also using its power like never before. Chinese ships routinely patrol around the Senkaku Islands, which are administered by Japan. And while China's leader stood in the Rose Garden at the White House in 2015 and said that his country had, and I quote, no intention to militarize the South China Sea. Today, Beijing has deployed advanced anti-ship and anti-air missiles atop an archipelago of military bases constructed on artificial islands. China's aggression was on display this week when a Chinese naval vessel came within 45 yards of the USS Decatur as it conducted freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea, forcing our ship to quickly maneuver to avoid collision. Despite such reckless harassment, The United States Navy will continue to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows and our national interests demand. We will not be intimidated, and we will not stand down.
And we'll be calling on multiple prospects in China, as well as continuing our relationship with Sun Paper in Shandong Province.
In recent years, China has taken a sharp U-turn toward control and oppression of its own people. Today, China has built an unparalleled surveillance state, and it's growing more expansive and intrusive, often with the help of U.S. technology. And when it comes to religious freedom, a new wave of persecution is crashing down on Chinese Christians, Buddhists, and Muslims. Last month, Beijing shut down one of China's largest underground churches. Across the country, authorities are tearing down crosses, burning Bibles, and imprisoning believers. And Beijing has now reached a deal with the Vatican that gives the avowedly atheist Communist Party a direct role in appointing Catholic bishops. For China's Christians, these are desperate times. So,
do you like him as a candidate?
I think he's brought a lot to the table. It's not my message. You know, I worry about the party in terms of expanding our base and what the message does to our recruitment of Hispanics, outreach to minorities. And so you've got to worry about the fall election and whether this is a message that's going to carry in Michigan, Ohio, and Florida, and those states that we need to carry.
The American people deserve to know. In response to the strong stand that President Trump has taken, Beijing is pursuing a comprehensive and coordinated campaign to undermine support for the president, our agenda, and our nation's most cherished ideals.
I think you've got to listen to what he says and how he conducts himself. And I don't know that he would be that different from what he is now in negotiating with Vladimir Putin. So,
you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I don't think it's a good thing. You know, we need people who, in the presidency, that understand how the world works, understands that there's a time for bluster and there's a time for reason.
The Chinese Communist Party is rewarding or coercing American businesses, movie studios, universities, think tanks, scholars, journalists, and local, state, and federal officials.
And then, Chairman, you'll look out in the audience and you'll see multiple members of the governor's cabinet. We're also here to support you. You'll see multiple members of the state legislative assembly. They're here to support you, and specifically Senator Caldwell, Senator Ingram, Representative Murdoch, Representative Hollowell. These are your senators and your representatives now. You call on them, and they're going to help you. Guarantee it. And Senator English, I saw you out there too. Thank you for being here as well.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
That was, welcome back to the program. That was Vice President Mike Pence on China, and that was from the Hudson Institute probably a couple months ago. Was it a couple months ago about this point? What is it? It's still November, so maybe a month or so ago. In related news, according to The Guardian and other publications, China is now gene editing babies. According to The Guardian, the world's first gene-edited babies have been created in China, according to scientific claims. So that's fantastic, right? Unconfirmed scientific breakthrough sparks ethical and moral concerns. Really, yeah. You know, will there be a time when here's the real question. Seriously, will there be a time when, if you want to have a kid the old-fashioned way, you're going to be considered the way we think of Amish people today? Like, is that what's going to happen? Like, oh, yeah, no, I'd rather just do it the old-fashioned way. And I mean, like, how regressive of you.
You've seen the movie Gattaca, haven't you?
Long time ago.
That's the entire basis of the movie, is that parents would go to these, essentially a breeding center, and they would take their DNA, samples of the DNA, create genetic code for a baby, and take out all of the unwanted genes, essentially, and pick all of the best ones from both of the parents to create genetically superior individuals. And of course, there are still people that exist in the world that are natural.
Yeah,
that are naturally birthed.
Yeah, I was naturally born.
And these people are persecuted regularly. And
they won't conform to societal standards.
Well, it's not that they're persecuted because they were born in the movie. They were born in an unnatural way to them.
Yeah.
And they have genetic defects like poor eyesight.
Yeah, normal stuff
like that. Yeah. So like that's one, like the main character.
So it's kind of like a eugenics, like we want the perfect specimen, and you're imperfect.
Basically,
a danger to us all.
But so like the main character has very poor eyesight, so he has to wear glasses, and that's one of the ways they get him. That's how they notice him. Well, he wears contacts to help fix his eyesight. In one of the scenes, they're checking people's eyes, and he has to take them out and then cross an entire road of traffic because the girl he's with runs across the road and he can't see.
Well, it's really scary though. Like what we were just talking about China, how they got the social credit score now, but it's almost like, if you read in this article about genetically edited babies, the second paragraph, if true, it would be a profound leap of science and ethics. If you're the totalitarian state of China and you're communist and you're, this is what a leftist society is supposed to be like. You don't have ethics. You know what I mean? And when I say leftist society, of course I lump, the horrors of World War II in there as well. I mean, I don't need to tell you some of the experiments. I mean, you can go look at some of the experiments that Germany did, what their scientists were doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, they were it was like no holds barred, just whatever. Hey, if you can think it up, there is no morals here. I mean, just do whatever you think you need to do. So I just, the idea of ethics over there, to me, is a farce. You can't even take it seriously. I mean, we have no idea what kind of stuff they're actually doing. It goes on, this kind of gene editing is banned in most countries as the technology is still experimental and DNA changes can pass to future generations, potentially with unforeseen side effects. Many mainstream scientists think it's too unsafe to try, and some denounce the Chinese report as human experimentation. Where have we heard about human experimentation? I'm just telling you, this is China here. I mean, contrast what you just heard, that montage, with the reports of what's happening over there. And, well, like Vice President Pence said, with propaganda, military, economically, scientifically, all of these things. And it's not a good recipe. Certainly got to ask the question. And I know it's touchy. I know nobody wants to do it. That's why I'll do it. Why is Arkansas's chief economic hope the communist state of China? Why are we trying to bring these Chinese companies here? Why China? Look, I disagree with giving money to companies to bring them here. I disagree with it. But every state does it. They all do it. Okay. Taking my personal preference and setting it aside, probably never even going to get there. There's probably no way you can ever make Arkansas quit giving all this money away to companies when Texas and everybody else does it. All right. But what about China? Why China? If you're going to do it, I would certainly support you doing it with American companies than China, especially when we have, people in the administration, people in intelligence agencies saying, hey, listen, this is, we don't need to be lulled to sleep here. They're not benign. Just like Russia's ambitions are not benign, neither are China's. So the question needs to be asked, and I would encourage the legislators who are listening to this program now, I would encourage you guys to start asking those questions as well. I mean, you have to. Let's just say, why don't we just stop doing this? That would be one thing. Let's stop doing this. Let's stop pursuing the Chinese. That would be the first step, I think. The telephone number, you can call or text 870-275-9799. At the top of the next hour, we're going to talk about taxes here in the state of Arkansas and what changes to our tax code can we expect in the upcoming session. We're going to talk about that coming up at 7:05. Then at 7:33, I want to introduce you. And I think this is appropriate. And I worked through the Thanksgiving break to try to make sure this interview was booked. I want to introduce you to a man by the name of Daniel Buttafuoco. He's an author of a book called Consider the Evidence, and it is he's a trial lawyer. And it says, a trial lawyer examines eyewitness testimony in defense of the reliability of the New Testament. As we enter this Christmas season, I just thought this would be the perfect interview to have on this Monday after Thanksgiving. We're going to take a break, reset here, and be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
We have lost $1.1 million.
Wow, $1.1 million. Okay, so what's going to happen to your business? You know, as a bee farmer, what's going to happen to your business going forward if dicamba is not restricted in some way?
So we more than likely will leave Arkansas for honey production and move our bees to South Mississippi to collect a honey crop. We may have to bring bees to Arkansas just to have a place to put them down through the summer months, but they will not be collecting any honey, and they will be in poor condition. It's just a matter of space, of areas that we can take our bees.
Yeah.
But the bees in the last 2 years, our beehives are in poor health, which we don't have enough bees to send to our pollination contracts either.
Richard, maybe Monsanto will sell you some sort of dicamba resistant.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back, folks. Thanks so much for being with us this morning. Those of you watching on Facebook Live over at Conduit News, as well as the YouTube channel, we really, really, really appreciate it. I'm actually shaking off. I feel like I've been sick for like 3 weeks. I feel better, but I have this cough that I'm dealing with, so you'll have to forgive me. And my cough is the worst I have found in the mornings. So just please bear with me when it comes to that. ConduitNews.com reporting that the Arkansas Democrat Party is late on paying their property tax. Interesting. Arkansas Democrat Party was 1 month late on property taxes. Reportedly, the delinquency was due to a clerical error on the part of a compliance officer. The bill was due by October 15th and sent in March. The party paid $2,895.67 for real estate and $847.07 for business assets and taxes. The Democrat Party of Arkansas paid $406.76 in penalties. So there you go. I'm sure it happens to the best of us. A lot of Arkansas, the Arkansas Democrat Party, though, I mean, if you think about it, they really are in a bad way, aren't they? I mean, they're a sinking ship in the state. They have been for a long time. The ones that have bailed have been allowed to come over into the Republican Party, which is, I mean, the skeptical part of me is like, okay, where were you when they weren't in power? So, is it about power? And most likely the answer is yes. Now, some of these new Republicans claim, well, it was about the abortion issue and they finally had to make the right choice. Okay, all right, great. That's good, okay? I can tell you that that's good. What I do have a problem with is then when we take these new converts and we allow them to be the head of the choir or give them the pulpit, which is what we have done as the Republican Party here in the state of Arkansas. That's what has occurred. And that, to me, is a huge no-no. It's a huge red flag. And I think there's a lot of conservative Republicans who are pretty upset about that. There is, real quick, the American Conservative Union. I just want to remind everybody, can you go to this tab, Joe? I don't have this one up on my screen, but you have it up on yours. The American Conservative Union released their 2018 rankings of the Senate, the House, the Arkansas Senate, Arkansas House. Yeah, that's it right there. Now scroll down. I want you to show them this. I want you to show the Senate. Let's go to the Senate. Next page, right there. So the Arkansas Senate, which is 69%, it's got a 69% average, a Democrat 33% average. Arkansas Senate statistics is an overall 59% when it comes to, the American Conservative Union, the things that they would support, conservative things, you know what I mean? 59%. The lowest Republican at 54%. Now, that would be an F, would be Jeremy Hutchinson, who's been indicted. The highest Democrat would be Larry Teague at 55%. And they scored a few bills, last year. I think mainly, fiscal session bills, because that's what it was, a fiscal session. But look at this. Yeah, isn't this strange? I mean, when you look at the massive amount of Republicans that are in the Senate, this is the American Conservative Union. Now scroll down. Let me get to the House here before I have to go to break. Keep going. Talks about the vote descriptions and individual votes. All right. Arkansas House, the Arkansas House, which has 75% Republicans, has an overall conservative union rating of 61%. Think about that. Now, scroll down here, because I thought this was funny. The lowest Republican was ranked as Jana De La Rosa at 49%. And the highest Democrat they have at 60% is Joe Jett, which is weird because I'm pretty sure Joe Jett's a Republican now. So I think that may be a little bit of an error there. But yeah, it said 2018. And it's 2018. So it's not like it's an old publication or anything.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Honeybee.
I hope not.
Is that no? No, you wouldn't buy that.
No.
Maybe they've got the cure and they can just fix it right
well,
away.
I think they think they have the cure for everything.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, let's go back to Jimmy Williams, berry farmer. Tell us about your operation.
We grow about 2 acres of blackberries, and we've got 20,000 strawberries in right now. We started in 2012, and we've been growing ever since. So even though I've not been damaged by dicamba myself yet, it's been a lot of hard work, and we don't want to see that ruined. You know, we have talked tentatively about if we lose this fight, you know, we may leave the Delta and go somewhere to the hills where we can get away from it.
Yeah, because they're not spraying up in that neck of the woods.
No, not to the extent. No,
okay.
No.
So yet we have another example of a business potentially being uprooted, changing in a major way, if this continues. All right, Sean Peoples, let's talk about organic farming.
Mm-hmm.
Is there benefit to farming organic stuff in Arkansas? Tell us all the stuff that you farm.
I'm a contract grower, so we farm 2,000 acres of organic. We have a processing plant outside of Augusta, and we grow for Del Monte, Seneca, Gerber, any of the large corporations that want to contract a high volume of organic acres. We do green beans, process our pumpkins, edamame, sweet potatoes, numerous other crops.
Okay.
You know, the benefits to us is the fact that we can make a living on 2,000 acres and we control our weed pressure effectively without dicamba.
Wow.
Anybody can if they're well managed. Dicamba is not necessarily the answer. There are thousands of other chemicals out there that these other producers can use. They've chose dicamba because it helps the bottom line. It's inexpensive.
All right, so you know, we've talked to your friends here. You know, their businesses are going to radically change if this continues. What about you? Are you guys got plans, or you know, if you guys lose this fight?
If we lose the fight, we will continue on right here in Arkansas until we go out. But we've already had customers tell us they won't be back to Arkansas.
Really?
No, yeah. Several large processing companies across the United States.
And that's because of dicamba?
Sure.
They cite that.
Yeah, because all these companies that we grow for, they're providing the inputs. It's their seed. It's proprietary to them. They're not going to risk the value of losing their crop.
Yeah, so it becomes a risk at that point.
Absolutely.
Okay. There's been legislation. You say you want the plant board to do their job. The fact that there was a ban at all was a big deal because other states, they don't have an independent plant board. But there's been not once but twice, there's been legislation and an attempt to change the plant board. Now, if you talk to the people that are behind this effort, they tell you they want you to pass this legislation, but it's not going to change anything. Well, that doesn't make sense. Why, if it's not going to change anything, then why have the legislation? Clearly, it's going to do something different. Mm-hmm. There's an effort underway, according to my sources, to court the Farm Bureau to get them on board with this new plan that's been tried once and failed, tried a second time and failed. And a lot of people think it's because there was a dicamba ban in the first place, and that Monsanto, much like they've now gotten the EPA to go along with it, they don't want an independent plant board. So let me just get your reaction to this plan and what you guys are hearing about this plan and what you think about the plan. We can start with Richard if you want to go. We'll go right down the line.
Well, as far as the plan, I've heard the same information that you're talking about. I think when Jimmy mentioned he wants the plant board to do their job, yes, the plant board had a ban. After April 15th, you could not apply the product. The problem is farmers applied the product, and there so far has been no penalty for that. Maybe $1,000 fine, but there's nothing to deter the farmers from using the product. If the product is available to purchase, it will be used, and that's the problem that I have with it.
Okay, that it's available to purchase. Okay, Jimmy Williams.
I guess I'll come back to saying I wish they would do their job. First of all, science has been ignored since, well, not ignored, but cast aside as much as possible since the beginning of this. It shouldn't take this much debate to recognize that this product is flawed. There's nothing wrong with the genetics of the soybeans or the cotton. The problem is with the formulation of dicamba. It's still volatile. It doesn't sit down, and it doesn't take, a room full of scientists to tell anybody that. It shouldn't. It's trying to be ignored.
Okay, Sean Peoples.
Well, I'm
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. We want you to be a part of that. One of the ways you can do that is just to keep listening. The other way, to call, text 870-275-9799. If you want to literally help contribute to the liberty machine, you go to conduitnews.com and click on store and buy some of our great merchandise that we have. Coffee mugs, T-shirts, whatever you want. We would appreciate that very much. Plus, they'll make great Christmas gifts. Merry Christmas to everybody out there. We really appreciate you being with us today. You know, when we mentioned, real quick, I need to do this every now and then. When we mentioned the liberty machine, when you think of a machine, you think of something that is designed for a specific purpose, something that's reliable, something that's dependable, going to give you the same result every time you go to use it. So in the context of a liberty machine, we want something that's going to produce more liberty, so a machine that will reduce the size of government. We also want a machine that's going to preserve the liberty we have. And there's a lot of different components to that. Some of those components have to do with informing the public about how legislators vote, so that you know, and you can go into the polls, into the voting booth, and you can go in there and make as much of an informed decision as you possibly can. That's part of the liberty machine. Part of that also really functions as a mirror on the side of the liberty machine, where the politicians have to look into that mirror, not who they think they are, but who they really are. Not what they said on the campaign trail, but what they actually did. Not who they thought they were, but who they have actually become since serving in the Marble Palace. That's one of the functions. Another one of the functions, when you look at the concept of Conduit News, being a conduit from the politicians, from the Marble Palace to the people, is an information channel, a way to communicate ideas, thoughts, a way to get out in front of some ideas, a way to try to see what's coming. Now, as conservatives, as people who want to measurably reduce the size of government, we have a General Assembly session coming up in January. Second week in January, it's going to kick off. Now, this is going to move fast and furious like they all do. But we do have, thanks to Governor Asa Hutchinson, he released his budget before Thanksgiving, we do have some indications about what they're going to attempt to do. There's some good news, and then there's some bad news. And we need to encourage our Republican lawmakers to be independent bodies, to be separate and equal branches of government, to understand the institutions they represent and the constitutional power that has been given and entrusted to them by the people's will. That being said, let's get into what can conservatives expect from the 2018 legislative session. The 2019 legislative session when it comes to your taxes. Are you ready for this? Now, this is a big deal. This is probably the number one thing that we all debate when it comes into political campaigns. We send our legislators down there, and we debate in the campaigns, well, how are you going to take my money? I mean, that's what it is, right? How are you going to take our money to fund the government? That's a big debate. Let's get to the good news. This is courtesy of Conduit for Action. It's up at conduitnews.com right now. The headline is pretty good. Tax cut switcheroo. Arkansas wants more, not less. The good news. Let's get to the good news. The big promise that dominated this year's campaigns is an Arkansas income tax cut. The plan would phase in a reduction in the top marginal income tax rate from 6.9% to 6.3% over 2 years and would increase standard deductions. How much relief would it bring for Arkansas taxpayers? Well, the income tax cut over a 2-year period, it's claimed, will save taxpayers $111 million. Later, over 4 years, the rate would decrease to 5.9%. Excuse me, I had to cough there. Okay, so that's the good news, right? $111 million. Remember, we went through a whole task force. They recommended some $200 million in tax cuts, meaning actually $200 million in a decrease of money going to the government, an actual definition of a tax cut, right? $200 million less. And so what do we end up with? We end up, basically half of that, $111 million tax cut. Less money going to the government. Okay, all right. What's the bad news? Well, the bad news is this. Governor Asa Hutchinson is counting on passing an internet sales tax and has included it in his budget. The governor also wants more tax money for highways. So we know these two things. Based on his budget, we know these are two of his goals. According to a recent estimate, is that the internet sales tax will take in another $35.4 million a year in taxes. In 2017, the claim was between $100 and $150 million. But wait, there are more taxes on the horizon. Recently, the governor floated the idea of extending a general half-cent sales tax that is set to expire and dedicating the half-cent sales tax to highways. This is estimated to bring in $180 million a year. It's also to make a note that it's also good to make a note the Highway Commission actually needs, or they say they need, or they want, $400 million a year. Since the income tax cut estimate is based on a 2-year period, let's look at all these tax changes over 2 years. So politicians are bragging about the proposed $111 million income tax relief over 2 years. And again, that was the good news. But over 2 years, the new taxes being proposed would take $70.8 million in internet sales tax and $360 million in sales taxes for highways. This means over a 2-year period, Arkansans will pay a net increase of $319.8 million in additional taxes if things go the way they're looking they're going to go. Now think about that. That is insane. That is unbelievable that this is even being considered. Now look at this right here. Look at the graph that we have. For those of you that are listening and not watching, you have the 2-year estimate of an income tax cut of $111 million. But then you have an internet sales tax. That's going to be an increase. So that'd be minus $70.8 million. Then you have a half cent for highways, which would be another $360 million that'd be taken from us over 2 years, which would mean that the net tax increase is $319.8 million. Okay, that's pretty devastating. But the tax grab could be even worse. It could be worse than that. Apparently, the governor, in light of all this, the governor still wants the same highway tax plan that was rejected by the legislature back in 2017. He wants to issue bonds or debt and adding another sales tax on the wholesale level to collect another $217 million a year, meaning a wholesale level, wholesale tax on gasoline and diesel. Now, if the legislature were to approve the tax for the ballot, in addition to renewing the half-cent sales tax, it would place, in addition to renewing the half-cent sales tax in place, it would be a $397 million total price tag per year for highways. That is only by coincidence. The Highway Commission wants $400 million a year, and essentially they're finagling away with this plan to give them really almost that, just shy $3 million. $397 million to $400 million. Well, it's $3 million among friends. So if they go forward and they decide to do everything they did, everything that is in the above article, and they also do this gas tax increase, and they refer it to the people to vote on, what does a 2-year estimate look like then on the people? Okay, well, it looks like this. You'd have an income tax of $111 million. Great, fantastic. But then you'd have an internet sales tax of $70.8 million, a half-cent tax for highways of $360 million, and a gas and diesel tax of $434 million over 2 years, which would mean in the next 2 years, the state of Arkansas would see a net tax increase of $753.8 million. We're getting awfully close to $1 billion over 2 years. Now, obviously, there are people listening to this broadcast that completely disagree with, well, so I bet they disagree with the fact that the internet sales tax isn't a tax increase. And then they would say that the half-cent sales tax for highways isn't a tax increase because we're already paying it and it's set to expire. Okay, let's go through those. The internet sales tax. On the internet sales tax, you will be told that it's not a tax. You'll be told that it is a tax on those bad old out-of-state sellers who are currently exempt from collecting tax because they do not have a facility in the state. And this is incorrect. The tax is not on out-of-state sellers. Every penny of the tax will come from Arkansas taxpayers. Out-of-state sellers only collect the tax for Arkansas. If passed, it will take more money out of your pocket and put it in the hands of state government. There was some talk about the new revenue being used to reduce other Arkansas taxes, but the legislation filed by Representative Dan Douglas does not include such a provision. Then you have a sales tax for highways. A half cent of the Arkansas sales tax is set to expire, but the governor wants more money for highways. You will be told the extension of the tax is not a tax increase. This is also wrong. Without a change, this half cent will be gone. That means they are imposing a new half-cent sales tax. Also, it doesn't matter whether the tax goes into the general revenue fund or the highway fund, a tax is still a tax. And then we have the gas and diesel tax. What will the arguments be for that? If the legislature puts the bond issue on the ballot and it gets approved, it will trigger a tax. Politicians will say, don't blame us, we just voted to let the people decide. Hogwash. A politician's vote to put the bond issue on the ballot is a vote for more taxes. How to spend your tax relief money. When you heard about the proposed income tax relief during the governor's campaign, you may have made plans for what you will do with your tax savings. Forget it. The state already has plans on how you will spend every penny. Only 2 questions remain. Will you tell your legislator no to raising the tax burden on Arkansans? 2, if not, where do you plan to cut your budget to cover the additional taxes the state wants from you? It's very, very well said there. This is, listen. It is 100% crystal clear that Republicans are not supposed to support higher taxes on their population. Okay? At the bare minimum, the tax burden on the people should remain the same. And maybe that's what they're going for here. It's possible you put out all of this stuff, and over 2 years, you're looking at a $700 million net tax increase on the burden of the people of Arkansas, and gets people like me to tell you about it. You're going to get riled up, and maybe they come back to us, and then they say, okay, never mind. It'll have to be revenue neutral, because they never wanted to decrease the amount of money going to government in the first place. That's very possible. You got to understand here, we're still before Christmas, right? We're a month out. There's right now going on at the Marble Palace, there is psychological warfare going on. I mean, there are people trying to, what if we tell them this? What if we tell them that? How do we get what we want? Well, you get what you want by throwing something out there that you know is unrealistic, and then maybe you get, you know what I'm saying? That's possible that's going on here. It's also possible that nobody even cares anymore, and you have a lame duck executive, and it's just time to do whatever you want. That's possible as well. But I will just tell the Republicans who are in power in the legislature, you guys are a separate and equal branch of government, at least in the House, and quite frankly, I don't think any of your constituents sent you down there to increase the tax burden on the people of Arkansas. Roads are a problem. Funding for the roads are a problem. But when you start talking about selling to us a $111 million tax cut, but you're going to be basically, trying to find $800 million in revenue from us over the next 2 years, that is a little hard to sell, don't you think? And I don't even think there's moderates that really want to sell this. If you put it on paper and look, dispute the numbers if you want. I mean, to me, even if you took out the gas and diesel tax, right? Even if you took out the gas and diesel tax, you're still looking at a monstrous bill here. Because, the gas and diesel tax, they could argue, well, the people might vote it down, right? That's still a net tax increase over 2 years of $319.8 million on the people of Arkansas. I mean, even that is just absolutely unbelievable. When we have a half-cent sales tax that's about to expire, that's great. That's in our code. It's about to expire, meaning government's going to shrink. And they're going to extend the half-cent sales tax? Man, that's just, from a conservative standpoint, that's really worrisome, don't you think? Just a little bit. We'll continue to follow this. And I just want to remind, though, that the task force was supposed to be about tax cuts, right? Not net tax increases. So hopefully somebody somewhere will kind of rethink some of this stuff, because the people of Arkansas are taxed enough already. And you combine this level of tax increase with the coming minimum wage mandatory increases, what that's going to do to small business. I don't think people have really thought this plan through. They may just be looking at that Medicaid spending going up, and up. And they're not sure what to do besides come back to the people and ask for more money. This is Conduit News Radio. Good morning to you. Back in a moment.
Agree with what Jimmy said. I mean, the plant board's got to do its job. The plan that everybody's talking about, it all boils down to this: it's money. Everything that's happening here, everything. I was on the dicamba task force. I started in the beginning. When I first heard of dicamba, I didn't even know what it was. Hadn't seen damage in my area. I'm from the Woodruff County area, White County. I spent 2 days at Kaiser doing research that we were required to do so by the governor's office to be on the task force, to educate ourselves. I was in shock. at what was happening. I was in shock that we had a task force because everything that we saw, it was volatile for 72 hours. That's your problem. You asked why you can't, nobody's responsible. Check your wind in Arkansas in a 72-hour period. It blows in all four directions.
Mm-hmm.
If I got 3 people spraying, I got no clue which 3 did it or which one of the 3 did it.
Wow. So you're saying, why was there a task force at all when it's pretty clear that this is just a bad product that has no business being used, right?
Absolutely.
Gosh.
Let's face it.
So the plan
times are tough for
specifically,
the
you say
Arkansas
it boils
General
down to
Assembly.
money. I'm trying to
They're
figure
all waiting for the spotlight exposing public corruption to end, so they won't be under so much scrutiny. And during this time, what if you're a legislator and you need money? What if you're slapped with a huge expense? What if your check for consultant services is late this month? Or maybe you just need extra cash now until payday. When that happens, you can't wait. Hi, I'm Bobby Blackmail for the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank, your trusted source to over 135 lenders to get you short-term cash fast. Use the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank today, and you can have up to $12,500 cash in your checking account tomorrow. Dried-up bribes no longer coming from Medicaid entities? Handled. Extra cash until your hopeful acquittal? Done. And you'll be surprised at how easy it is to get extra cash. Just be an elected official and be comfortable with the status quo, and we'll connect you with a fellow legislator who is ready to loan. It's quick and easy. And don't worry if you can't make the payments, because the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank is designed to help you get through these tough economic times. There are other ways you can pay off your debt, like by voting the way the establishment wants, or by rewarding some with committee chairmanships. So forget about overdraft fees and the spirit of covetousness that sometimes overwhelms the best of lawmakers. Just remember, the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank for short-term cash between colleagues when you need it fast.
Some transactions have long-term consequences.
Paul Harrell, parody.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right. Isn't that crazy? That is a crazy article over at conduitnews.com. Absolutely nuts. Nuts. In other news, we have an Arkansas judge that was attacked in court the other day in eastern Arkansas. The man's name was Monjobius Clark. You got a first name like that and your last name's Clark. You're expecting a different Monjobius something other than Clark. The judge, Monjobius. Oh, Monjobius Bon Jovius. Yeah. The judge did suffer minor injuries, and we hope he is recovering. This was the Monjobius Clark, 23. Authorities don't know what prompted the attack. Several deputies had to step in to stop the attack. Good job, law enforcement. The judge sustained bruises and an injury to the lip. The judge was treated by paramedics. The defendant had been booked the day prior, for aggravated assault on a certified law enforcement officer or an employee of a correctional facility. Well, it's not going to take too long to get the judge. Well, I mean, what's the defendant going to say? What's the defense going to say? Like, my client isn't capable of such an act. Well, you just assaulted a judge. I think that's pretty conclusive that you are capable of. Over in the Gazette, we had this yesterday, and I would encourage you to read it. We'll probably get to some of this in a little bit, but there's a ballot. Arkansans have this propensity, it seems, if it's on the ballot, they're going to vote yes for it. If there's a constitutional amendment or a statute or something, and you get people just like to vote for things, you know. Well, let me tell you something. The fact that minimum wage increase, that's got liberals everywhere talking. Liberals everywhere talking. They can't win elections in Arkansas. Well, at least they can't win elections in Arkansas as Democrats. So why not go to this ballot measure situation where if you have enough money, you pay the signature gatherers, you get your signatures, and now they're talking about things like campaign finance. They're talking about things like, well, we don't need to let the Republicans redistrict Arkansas after the 2020 census. We don't need to allow it because, well, the Democrats and liberals said in Arkansas had no problem when they held all the constitutional offices. And now that Republicans hold all Arkansas constitutional offices, now they want to try to, change how we district things. What exactly are they trying to change? In y'all's opinion, what are they trying to do to the plant board? If it's about money or, what does that mean about money?
Well, if the plant board is moved into the Department of Agriculture like the governor proposes, the governor would have full control of every aspect of agriculture in the state, and there would not be a body like we have set in place now to oversee what is going on. So, in other words, the money, whoever contributes to the governor will have input in what is taking place in agriculture in Arkansas.
Okay, so you're saying basically, whoever is the highest bidder, that's who will make the decisions, and it won't be the people who are actually in the fields, who are actually doing the work.
That's correct. You're not going to outspend Monsanto.
So it's Monsanto. And this is a huge, you guys realize this is a huge undertaking, right? Is there anybody that's ever won against Monsanto? Except recently you had the guy who, the court said he got cancer from Roundup, but that took years. There are people that were saying that forever, and it's now he's, they're saying, yeah, it can cause cancer. Monsanto's trying to dispute it, obviously. But where do y'all go from here?
You're doing it.
Okay.
You're right. We can't outspend Monsanto. They got $88 billion. There's no way. We're just a afterthought. I can tell you that in Louisiana, they continue to build a multi-billion-dollar dicamba plant down there during all this and phase them.
Yeah.
What we have to do is get to the public. We need the soccer moms to know, why is your soccer field dead? If it's volatilising for 72 hours and it's killing everything around it, don't you think you're breathing it?
Yep.
You don't have a choice.
Yep.
The more you spray it, the more it loads the atmosphere. The higher the number of acres that you spray, the more acres get damaged. If you let them spray all summer long on every acre, we'll all suck it in all year long. You want your kids to do that? No. You've got courtyard up at Osceola that was graveyard dead, killed the magnolia trees in it. How did it get there? There's not a field that close to it. We got movement up to 20 miles away.
Really?
20 miles.
It can go as far as 20 miles.
Can go over 20.
Wow. Well, so talk about this. Front page of the Gazette, scientists with the Federal Environmental Protection Agency recommended restrictions on dicamba use that the agency ultimately ignored when it recently allowed for the spraying of the herbicide on soybeans and cotton for another 2 years. Emails obtained by the Arkansas Democrat Gazette through Freedom of Information Act show that the EPA scientists on October 5th sought a 443-foot infield buffer between areas.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us this morning, kind of in the home stretch here. I want to thank you for starting the beginning of your week after Thanksgiving with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine here. We need your help. Head on over to conduitnews.com, by the way, and click on store, and you can get our mugs, our T-shirts, and we would really appreciate that. Folks, I want to welcome to the program for the first time. We have an author and I understand trial lawyer. His name is Daniel Buttafuoco. Is that how you say your last name, Daniel?
Well, we say Buttafuoco.
Buttafuoco. That's what it was. Buttafuoco. Okay, all right. My producer was telling me one thing. But anyway, so Daniel, you're the author of this book, Consider the Evidence. A trial lawyer examines eyewitness testimony in defense of the reliability of the New Testament. First of all, welcome to the program, and what made you want to write a book like this?
Well, thank you for having me. Well, I've been a Christian for many years, and I started getting into the reasons for why we believe what we believe. It all started from a discussion I had with a fellow trial lawyer about 20 years ago, in which it was a gentleman I tried cases against, and in the civil negligence field of litigation, the lawyers, we sort of beat each other up in court, and then afterwards we go out and have a cup of coffee or a beer, and very much like boxers in the ring, it's not personal. So you develop relationships with your adversaries, and they often send you their friends and relatives to represent if they're hurt. But in this particular instance, I was invited to my adversary, if you will's house, and we were hanging out on this back porch, and we started to suddenly get into a debate. And he was a very liberal atheist guy, and he was explaining, raising his points of view, and I was defending the Christian point of view of the Bible. The party immediately split into two. This is 20 years ago, when things were less hostile, less divided.
You could actually have a
than they are today.
You could actually have a civil discussion and disagree.
Right, no pun intended. We were very civil. Two civil lawyers having a civil discussion.
That's great. That's
great. And actually, to this day, he's one of my best friends. So when I left that engagement, I felt that while I knew I was a very good lawyer, I'd won a lot of good cases, I felt that I had not done a really good job in representing the Christian point of view, that I didn't know enough, that I needed to know more of why we believe these things. If you're going to defend the position, the Christian position, the spiritual position, the Bible position, you need to know some things. I mean, that's really important. I don't go into court unprepared, so why should I go into life defending my faith unprepared? So I embarked on a journey, ended up getting a master's degree in theology. I studied with top apologist Ravi Zacharias, and this debate has continued now for 20 years. And in fact, the other day he said to me, he goes, "You've just demolished all my arguments. I have nothing left." So he's still not a believer, but at least he has no more objections to the gospel. And, it's very hard to change after, all these years, but at least we're having a rational discussion and we're getting there. And the people who are observing the discussion are sort of swinging to my side.
If you're just joining us, we're talking with author Daniel Buttafuoco. He's the author of the book, Consider the Evidence, A Trial Lawyer Examines Eyewitness Testimony in Defense of the Reliability of the New Testament. So Daniel, talk a little bit about this. Talk about how your experience as a trial lawyer, examining evidence, things like that, how does that, how did that inform your arguments when it came to writing the book?
Well, first of all, I'm not a scholar. I'm not a biblical scholar, and the points that I'm using in the book have literally been around for centuries, in some cases millennia. So what a trial lawyer does, the good trial lawyers anyway, our skill set is to take complex subjects such as medicine, engineering, accounting, science, in this case theology and philosophy, and break it down so that the average person can understand it. We are taught by various studies and things that we should aim for an intellectual age of high school, so that when we talk to a jury, they understand what we're saying. You can't win your case if the jury doesn't understand your point. So what I've done in this book, I've taken these complex subjects that have been around, and I've distilled it into really one long summation, or a brief, if you will, as to why I believe and why we should believe the New Testament is reliable. It's a historical account, it's accurate, and we can trust it. And so this is what trial lawyers do, and that's what I've tried to do. I'm also, as a trial lawyer, I guess if I'm expert at anything, I'm expert on evidence. What counts as evidence, what's persuasive, what is reliable to believe, and why, what are the indicia or indications of truthfulness, and based on that, I wrote the book.
Wow. So one of the things that I've heard, for a while, you're just taking in consideration the resurrection. In these in the Gospels, you have people writing down that the first people to see, that the tomb wasn't there was or the tomb was empty were women. And I've heard in the past, that's not necessarily back in the day. A woman's word wasn't considered as reliable as a man's word. Yet they wrote, that it was women. That's the account that it was women that saw the empty tomb. Do you address that point?
I raised that in the book.
I
raised that in the book. Well, the reason that's an important point is because sometimes people accuse the biblical narrative of being legend or being fabricated, and it actually has so many points where it's almost proof. Well, it is proof in a way that it's not fabricated, because if you were going to fabricate an account, you would never use women as witnesses to such an important event in the first century. And the reason for that is this: it wasn't that they were poor witnesses. The women actually make the best witnesses. They know details. They know everything. But in the first century, it was illegal for a woman to be a witness. And in the case of the resurrection, one of the first two witnesses was a prostitute. So you're starting your case with, illegal witnesses, one of whom has a problem with credibility right off the get-go. And the only reason that could ever be is because that's actually the way it happened. So the Bible, the New Testament especially, it records the good, the bad, and the ugly exactly as it went down. If you're going to fabricate an account of the resurrection, you'd have Jesus appearing to Pontius Pilate and Caiaphas, the high priest, but it doesn't roll out that way.
Yeah. And isn't that exactly how life is too? And that's like another reason why it's so reliable. You said
also with witnesses in general in a court. You have the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and the various witnesses that are recorded therein. They all see things slightly differently, which is exactly the way a trial goes down. I don't know how many trials you've seen, but I've seen hundreds. And even in the best cases, the testimony is never exact because they're looking at it from different perspectives. So everything about this account rings true. And there's so much else. I mean, you have Paul defending himself before courts, and you can actually see that as a trial transcript. I mean, the detail with which his defense is recorded. Somebody was taking notes. You can just tell. There's a lot of good stuff like that in the Bible that when you really examine it, it really pans out as very believable.
Now, so we're really right into the Christmas season now, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, this morning, is because there is the New Testament account, of Christ being born in a manger, traveling to Bethlehem because of the census. Then you have the virgin birth. You have these accounts.
Well, then you got the prophecies.
Yeah,
you got the prophecies, which. I mean, the prophecies are in stunning detail. People really don't do justice to the prophecies concerning Jesus. They bring up things like Nostradamus. I mentioned this in the book. Nostradamus predicted, according to some, that Hillary Clinton would win the 2016 presidential election. I saw a special on TV. It's actually ridiculous. You could twist those words to mean anything, but the prophecies in the Bible are not like that. They're so detailed that it would be impossible to miss it if you really look at it. In fact, one of the things I do all the time is I let people read Isaiah 53. I cover the top so they don't know what it is. Yes. I say, who is that talking about? And everybody says, without exception, everybody says, that's Jesus. What's your point? And it turns out that was written approximately 600 years before Christ was born. It's impossible to fabricate this stuff.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm glad you brought up Isaiah, because that, to me, is the... there are some who make the argument that, well, Isaiah was written by two different people. There was the actual Isaiah wrote the first half, but somebody else wrote the second half. Well, it just so happens.
It wouldn't matter anyway if it's the case. It's still so accurate. Even if 10 people wrote it, it wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I really appreciate that. You bring in the Old Testament because that really does make everything crystal clear when you realize what's in the New Testament. Folks, again, we're talking with Daniel Buttafuoco, and he's the author of a book called Consider the Evidence. A trial lawyer examines eyewitness testimony in defense of the reliability of the New Testament. And you know what? It's Cyber Monday, Daniel. And I'm looking at this right now on Amazon.com. So, if people were wanting a book or something to give their family member, I think this might be a great choice. I'm sure you would agree.
Yeah, we made it very affordable. It's not about making money. I make plenty of money as a trial lawyer representing accident victims. I do it all over the country. And I wanted to give something back. And so we put this in a paperback. And the foreword was written by the famous author Ravi Zacharias. So we have his endorsement on the book. And I just want people to have a simplified account so they can arm themselves with some truths so that when they go to work or they're sitting in a cubicle and somebody next to them says, the Bible was written by man, you can't trust it, or it's a bunch of fairy tales. I've heard it all. you at least have some response so we could stem the tide of degradation in this country. I mean, we got to go back to the basics.
Well, there's a lot of, we talk about fake news a lot on this program. There's a lot of fake news out there, but, questioning, what's in these accounts, it's, the fakest news of all in terms of, there's a reason, Christianity has survived as long as it has. There's a reason, it's the Bible's the #1 best-selling book, or the most read book because there is, supernatural power in it. And on the supernatural, I'd like to ask you something, Daniel. Obviously we have these accounts. We have these accounts in the Old and New Testament of these, amazing supernatural things. You have come at this from an intellectual, argument from a trial lawyer's basis, what I'm trying to say. And you mentioned earlier that your friend that initially set you on this journey, he's basically exhausted all of his arguments. He admits that you've kind of nailed him down, and yet you say he still doesn't believe. So why do you think that is?
Well, because ultimately faith has to come from God. Only God can change someone's heart. Most of the problems, most of the so-called objections to the gospel, and as you know, the gospel means good news. So we have fake news, and then we have good news, right?
That's right.
And that's why I want to get back to. I want to get back to the good news because it's the only answer for our society. It's the only answer for individuals. But ultimately, you need faith, and that can only come from God. And what I found is that most of the objections are motivated by a desire for people to live contrary to what the Bible teaches. In other words, you can't. It's very hard to sleep at night if you are at odds with your Creator. And so people invent these false imaginations, these mental gymnastics, if you will, so that they can sort of argue away the plain truth of Scripture so they don't have to deal with it. You know what? If it's not true, I don't have to worry about it. But the problem is truth has a way of biting you in the butt, and it is true. And we're all going to face judgment someday. And I would rather know that today. If you're going into a sentencing hearing, you better know something in advance before you get there rather than to just sort of wing it on the day of judgment. And so I'm just trying to sound the alarm, wake people up a little bit, have them consider the evidence, and at least give the Bible a good look, If after you read it, you still want to continue the way you are, then that's your choice. But let's not pretend that we don't have evidence or that all religions are equal, because they're not. Let's look at the evidence and then make an intelligent choice.
Daniel Buttafuoco, I really appreciate it, author of Consider the Evidence. I love what you said about faith. It is a gift from God, and it comes from God. And I wish you a Merry Christmas, sir. Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, God bless you, and thanks for having me.
God bless you. God bless you. Folks, we're going to take a break. Going to reset here. Again, the book is Consider the Evidence. A trial lawyer examines eyewitness testimony in defense of the reliability of the New Testament. We'll be back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Those buffers instead were set at 57 feet. So that's now the regulation. Now, would the 443-foot buffer, would that help things at all, or what do y'all think?
No.
Okay, so even if it, so
Well, one way it would help is it would, if a gentleman was willing to follow the law, then there would be fields he would not be able to spray at all at 443-foot buffer, because it would encompass the whole field eventually.
Okay.
And so it would deter part of the amount of spraying that would be taking place.
Mm-hmm. But a 57-foot buffer, I mean, is that basically might as well not have a buffer at all?
That's correct.
As far as volatility goes, it wouldn't help anything. It's moving that far and further.
Okay.
Already.
So it's just a joke. I mean, why even have the regulation at 57 feet at all?
Well, here was the statement made to me. I asked the question at the task force. This is in the minutes. You can pull it up. Went to Rockefeller Center. We had.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio.
Yeah, that was good.
With Paul Harrell.
That was good. Really appreciate that talk with Daniel Buttafuoco, the author there. Really good. I'd like to have him back on the program at some point, too. But yeah, it's that time of year where we can say Merry Christmas to one another. So Merry Christmas to all of you guys out there. It's now, Joe says I can't say it because it's not December 1st. I think the next Sunday's the first Advent Sunday, so it's for sure going to be official a week from today. Yeah, yeah, Joe. I know you're cool with saying it. I know. All right, so hang on a second. No. Okay, well we got. All right. What do you want to say? What do you want to say, Joe?
See, normally, okay. Here's the thing. I have a thing about the Christmas season starting on Black Friday because of the fact that I have this. I take issue with not giving every holiday its due. That's why I
think Thanksgiving has its due.
I know, but not lately. You start Christmas music at the end of. A lot of people start Christmas music at the end of October. People put trees up, stuff like.
Yeah, that's true.
I get the love for Christmas, and I understand.
Well, it's all about the money for these stores. That's
exactly,
what it's about.
And that's why I take issue with. Like people who don't give every holiday due. Yeah, I get the people who really love Christmas.
But you would agree. You would agree.
I know someone specifically who has like 10 to 15 Christmas trees in their house, and 7 to 8 of them stay up year round.
Need to have an
intervention. And they're like little Christmas trees.
Need to have an intervention with that person.
Yeah. Well,
that's like a cat lady.
They just really love Christmas, and I'm just like, okay, I get that.
Well, there's ladies that really love cats.
I know, it's true.
It's weird.
But
you would agree that when Santa Claus, that last float comes down, in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade, Thanksgiving is essentially. I mean, it's Christmas is here. That's why Santa Claus is the last.
No, at 12 a.m. on the day after Thanksgiving.
Well,
that is when Christmas begins.
I think Santa would disagree with you, but all right,
I disagree with Santa.
Speaking of Christmas, okay, Conduit News wants to give you a book today. All right, so the next caller, 870-275-9799, we're giving away a copy of A Christian Manifesto by theologian, the late Francis Schaeffer. That's A Christian Manifesto. Going to give that book away to the next caller as part of it being Christmas, to celebrate Christmas. So you could have it for yourself. You could give it to a family member, but it is Cyber Monday. A lot of people are going to be doing a lot of shopping, but if you want a copy of Francis Schaeffer's book, A Christian Manifesto, we will give it to you, the next caller, 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. Let's see here. We've got this border situation real quick. Just a few of the top stories today. China is essentially claiming that they have gene-edited their babies. That is raising some serious ethical concerns. We have U.S. Border and Customs agents using tear gas to try to get the migrant caravan to go away. We also have, let's see here, Theresa May begging for political support after she has ignored the people's will on Brexit. And we have Emmanuel Macron over in France, who's got his own problems because his citizens are rioting because of the gas tax. Also, didn't really talk about this, but this is in the culture wars. You have Kevin Hart, who is a comedian. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him. But he decided to have a birthday party for his son, and his son wanted a Cowboys and Indians themed birthday party. I'll reference you to the story over at Conduit News a few weeks ago, where we have 2 Arkansas junior high schools considering changing their mascots because they play each other. One is the Cowboys, one are the Indians, and they don't really like when the 2 football teams play. They don't think it's politically correct. So we have actor-comedian Kevin Hart and his wife. They decide to throw their son a birthday party, and they make it Cowboys and Indians themed. And then, of course, you see the photo that they put on social media. You have people in cowboy gear. You have people in Native American gear, and people lost their minds. One person on Twitter writing, "Imagine being so woefully out of touch that one marginalized group appropriates another." One user wrote, accusing the largely black group of appropriating Native American culture. So because Kevin Hart is black, he's out of touch. Because see, double standard much? No. He's black and wearing Indian gear. He's woefully out of touch. One marginalized group appropriates another. I mean, I'm telling you, these people are essentially, when they get in this state, they are crying heretic, heresy, heresy. It's a religion. Progressivism is a religion in this country. People have to understand that. Another user likened Hart's party to having a slaves and masters party. Another says, "You're a joke, and if you think this is fine, I'm having a slaves and masters party next year on Abraham Lincoln's birthday." Another person simply said, "So ignorant, it hurts. Learn your history!" Exclamation point. What does that even mean? So ignorant, it hurts. Learn your history. Are they saying that they don't know that, there were cowboys? And it seems like it's a very historical nod. They're cowboys and Indians. Cowboys and Indians used to fight each other. That's history. By the way, is it wrong of me to ask the question, are you glad that you have the life that you have right now because of the things that happened in the past? And the reason I say this is because I was listening to Jerry Seinfeld, and he was on one of these late night shows, and he was saying, Thanksgiving's great. We love it. But we also know that it was horrible because of what happened to the Native Americans, So we celebrate Thanksgiving, but we also recognize that it was terrible. Just, sometimes, life is great, life is terrible, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, to myself, that is true. But I guess I just wonder, is anybody out there thankful for the existence that they have, for number one, being alive, for being in America? You know what I'm saying? Like, I know there's a lot of yada, yada, yada between the first Thanksgiving and having a computer on, in your pocket. But if anybody's ever read that book, The 5,000-Year Leap, I'm pretty happy with the fact that things worked out the way they did, right? Because there's a lot of advantages. There's a lot of technology that makes our lives easier. Now we're getting to the point where it's too much technology. It's actually inhibiting our social development. So too much of anything is a bad thing potentially. But over the Thanksgiving holiday, I was just asking myself, who's willing to say? I think you would be run out of town, called a heretic or whatever if you were to say, I'm glad that history worked out the way it did. Yeah, there's bad things. I wish that some of those bad things, or I wish that the bad things didn't happen. I think everybody did, but at the same time, look where we are now. Also ask the question this, when it comes to the whole, Indian civilization decreasing and almost being eliminated because of the Western civilization that was coming to conquer it. would there be any other culture at that time that would have encountered an inferior culture technologically that wouldn't have done the exact same thing? And the answer is no. So we are constantly in this country trying to force 21st century altruism and morals on a people in the 1400s that would have never thought to show compassion when it comes to civilizations clashing.
The news